this was published in the New York Times. You got this article says how Alvin the Beagle helped usher in a Democratic Senate. All right. So they're talking about Senator Raphael Warnock was sworn in this week as Georgia's first black senator, and he arrived with a canny canine assist. All right. So they literally, I've seen another headline for the same article that was like, how a dog, helped Democrats win the Georgia Senate election. So they're literally out here. New York Times is out here crediting a dog for, helping the Democrats to win to win back the Senate. All right. So they're out here crediting a dog. All right. But that same New York Times, you don't see them out here crediting the actual people, right? Like, we know who really did this, right? It was really black people, right? Black people helped these John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, right? It was black voters that went out there, some of them risking their lives to vote in person, many, doing online mail-in voting. They went out there, the volunteers, I saw stories from volunteers who went out knocking doors. What really did it was the promise of the $2,000 stimulus checks. All right. It was black people who are in desperate need of support in the midst of this pandemic that has been unfairly, disproportionately harming black and brown communities, right? We know how COVID has impacted black and brown communities. We just did a story recently about how it was, in December, in all of December, all of the job loss for December was all women of color. That's who accounted for all of the job loss. It was black and Latino women. They unfortunately don't include statistics on Asian women, on Asian people, or indigenous people, and that's in with those studies. But for black, white, Latino, it was black and Latino women that accounted for all of the job loss in December. All right. So there was like something like 140,000 jobs lost. That doesn't mean that only black women and Latino women, Latinx women lost jobs. That's not what that means. It just means that for every white person that lost a job, another white person gained a job. And in fact, more than everyone, for everyone lost, more than one person gained a job. Both for white men and white women. And in this article, they framed it as like women accounted for all the job loss, when in fact, it wasn't women. White women had job gains in December. Black and Latino women lost jobs, right? But people are desperate in Georgia. They're desperate. They were promised $2,000 stimulus checks, and they went out there and they voted in overwhelming numbers. Black and brown people in Georgia, and particularly black people, voted for these politicians under the promise of $2,000 stimulus checks. Then immediately after being promised that, and you got quotes from Joe Biden talking about coming out saying like, listen, we are, you get these two elected and we will immediately pass those stimulus checks, right? $2,000 stimulus checks, he said.
And this is not an exaggeration. Georgia, the whole nation is looking to you to lead us forward for real. You know it. You cannot turn on any national television show without knowing about what's going on here and what you all are doing. The power is literally in your hands. Unlike any time in my career, one state can chart the course, not just for the next 4 years, but for the next generation. By electing John and the Reverend, you can make an immediate difference in your own lives, the lives of the people all across this country, because their election will put an end to the block in Washington, that $2,000 stimulus check, that money that will go out the door immediately, tell people who are in real trouble. Think about what it'll mean to your lives. Putting food on the table, paying rent, paying your mortgage, paying down the credit card, paying the phone bill, the gas bill, the electric bill.
Then all of a sudden, they did a head fake as soon as those two were elected. And now all of a sudden they just head faked. And now the $2,000 stimulus has all of a sudden been turned into a $1,400 stimulus. So, they're now adding in the $600 from when Donald Trump just passed for COVID relief, and somehow they're adding that number in. Oh, well, while they're at it, why don't they add the $1,200 from the CARES Act back in March and just call it $200 stimulus now, because they said 2,000, and apparently we're just adding in numbers from previous administrations. We're allowed to do that all of a sudden. And I saw quotes from like volunteers who were just, they were crushed when they saw Biden go back on his promise of $2,000 stimulus checks. I read one quote on Twitter from a volunteer who said, I knocked on doors. I went around and I knocked on doors and I told people, I'm a principled person. And I told these people, you vote for these politicians, you will get $2,000 stimulus checks. All right. And this volunteer said they went around door to door and they promised that to people. And they saw the look, they heard the responses from people, and they know that people voted based on what ultimately turned out to be a lie. He said they turned me into a liar. And he's like, I'm not a liar, but they made me a liar. And he was infuriated. And so you do damage, not just to the people that you made false promises to, but to your own movement. You discourage people from fighting for you in the future. You make people cynical about politics when you do that. It discourages people because they say, well, what are you telling me this time that's going to turn out to be a lie, right? So you're not going to go out there and enthusiastically go. And those are the people that you need to knock on the doors, to make the phone calls, to convince the other people, to bring them along. You need their support. And when you lie like that, and you go back on that, and you deceive people in this way, it doesn't just discourage the voters, it discourages the volunteers as well moving forward. So this is really harmful to our movement. And for New York Times to come out here and to give credit to a dog instead of focusing on the real issue, which is the fact that the Democrats have now gone back on their promise of $2,000 checks, and they're now talking about $1,400 stimulus. That should be the real concern, and that should be the real focus of the media. But instead, you got them doing these flowery puff pieces instead.